And we are live. Hey, everybody. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about just some of my future plans for this channel, some content I'm working on, and talk about my business a little bit and what I'm kind of planning on doing with that because I know a lot of the people that are following me on here are part of my business. So, first of all, start with the channel a little bit. I do have a introductory video that'll explain briefly kind of what I'm planning to do on this channel, who I am, everything like that. First off, I guess I should start like why I'm doing a live instead of doing just a video explaining this. I like to work through my thoughts. And yes, I could work through my thoughts, write down a script, but I want to I want to even out what I'm doing that's scripted. It's all very edited, filtered, and have a good even distribution of that and the raw lives and just kind of saying what I'm actually thinking at that time. Which right now is YouTube and future plans for the business. I'm gonna adjust this lighting a little bit. So as far as content, I think my plan for right now is my plan at least is to do one long form for YouTube a week. I think that's manageable with my current schedule. I'm not going to promise that that's going to happen every week, but that's kind of the goal, the bar that I'm setting that I'm trying to aim for every week. And then on a good day, I'll have 2 shorts that I'll post a day, but most certainly at least 1 every single day. There's no reason I can't do that unless I'm just being lazy or I get really sick, like what happened. I'll get into that in a minute, but that happened recently, and I ran out of my stockpile. Couldn't record because I was super sick. I'm still kind of getting over it, and so you might have noticed like a day or two where there wasn't videos, and that was why. Um, but yeah, unless there's some weird reason like that, which shouldn't happen anymore because I've learned my lesson. I'm gonna build up a bigger stockpile of videos. Um, yeah, so 1, hopefully 2 shorts every single day, except for Sunday. I'll make that clear. I won't be posting on Sundays. And then trying to do at least 1 long form every single week. As far as my lives, they will be a little bit inconsistent. I'll probably do one every week or more. But what I mean by inconsistent is I'm not gonna like schedule lives unless it's like a really big, like something that I've been planning for a long time, or there's like an event or something. Spill some coffee on my desk. But unless there's something like that, I most likely won't schedule lives. They'll just kind of be spontaneous. I want to talk about this topic at this time because that's what I prefer doing when I'm doing a live. When I schedule lives, I tend to over prepare and then it just feels scripted. And then it's not enjoyable for me. It feels just like recording a video. So that's what you can expect as far as lives. They're going to be a lot more spontaneous, which I know a lot more people won't be able to make it to lives because they can't plan for it. I get that people have busy schedules, but the lives are more for me than anything else. You can always watch the lives afterwards. I'll keep them up so you can watch them if you're really interested, but the lives are more for I like to work through my thoughts. I like to be able to say it out loud. So lives really help me. So these will probably be coming up a lot more often. And when you can make it to one, awesome. Love it. Would love to hear from you guys. Would love to see what you guys think about my future plans, what I'm talking about. Call me stupid and tell me why. Like, I'm totally cool with all of that. Oh, man. It's not that late. It's 8 o'clock right now, but I'm just exhausted. So it is Friday right now. I have been sick since Monday. 2 of those days was literally bedridden, couldn't get up. Like, it was pretty bad. I don't know what it was, if it was just the flu or something got me pretty bad, but that's why content has been pretty slow. Instagram's been like dead. I haven't posted anything on Instagram. I need to get back on that. It's it's hard for me because I enjoy YouTube, and I immediately started getting pretty decent traction on YouTube when I started posting. And so the little amount of motivation that I had for Instagram was completely depleted because I saw how well my same content that I was posting on Instagram was doing on YouTube. And so it made it very difficult for me to want to go back to Instagram after starting on YouTube. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing more personal posts on Instagram. And what I mean by that is like posting like when I get a Christmas tree or something like that and posting more pictures. And so that's for more people that want to see a little bit more into my personal life. I'm not super open with that stuff because I like to have my two lives separate. But just little things, where I can post like daily or like behind the scenes of posting like, hey, this is the video I'm working on, take a picture of it like in my editing process, or like this is the book I'm reading, stuff like that. So I think that's kind of the shift I'm going to make on Instagram. It's going to be more personal, still be a public account, but more personal posts. And then YouTube is where I will post my quality, like valuable content that I'm really trying to help people to learn. I'm trying to share what I'm learning in that moment because that's really my focus with YouTube and with all of my content from the beginning has been just trying to share whatever it is that I have learned recently, whatever I found super helpful on my journey, and being able to give that to other people. Because I think you'll be amazed. And I find so many people that make this mistake of they think that like, oh, this is super simple. Everybody must know this. When in reality, like I've had a lot of friends where they're like, "Oh yeah, I just never said it because I just kind of figured everybody knew that." I was like, "Yeah, that would have been really helpful for you to tell me earlier. It would have saved me a lot of problems if you would have told me that." And I think a lot of people do that where it's like, "Oh well, I don't know. I kind of figured everybody did that." When in reality, they could have helped a lot of people by sharing that. And so my goal is I don't know what other people do or don't know. So I'm just going to share everything that was helpful for me, whether I think it's popular knowledge or not. I'm just going to share what really helped me in that moment, what really helped me with business, my life, everything. Um, I just finished recording a video. It was just a short for YouTube, but basically just showing like a bunch of books that I really recommend that have really helped me. This one's really good for time management, right? And little stuff like that where it's like some people they know what they want to do, they just don't know where to start, right? So like if you're starting a business and you're really bad at time management but you never have heard of that book, that might really help you where it's like, hey, this book really helped me with time management, right? And then I have like interesting books, like I got this one, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is like, yeah, there's some good stuff in there. A lot of businesses have used it, but for the most part, it's just a really interesting book. I really enjoy reading it, and it's super short. You can read it in a day easily. Um, I think I read this entire book in about 2 hours, and that was like taking in everything I was reading, thinking about it. It took 2 hours because they're short little pieces in the book. Another book that I recommended was this one by Robert Kiyosaki, which is really good for investors. And you don't have to be an investor per se to read that book, but like I think everybody should be in some way an investor. You're investing in something, whether it's stocks, crypto, real estate, something. It's just smart. And it doesn't have to be your full time thing. It can be very much a side thing that you do passively while you're working on your business and working on your other financial stuff. But just it's smart to put money aside that's going to something that's focused on future while you're working on the present, right? And that's what you should be looking at of like, okay, this is a scam and here's why. That book's really good for that. But yeah, like that kind of stuff where it's like somebody just might not have thought of it, or didn't have somebody to tell them like, hey, this book really was helpful for me. And so I guess where I'm going with that is just encouraging you guys if you're making content, or you don't have to make content, like even like in your own personal circles, where it's like Yeah, but I'm sure everybody knows that. It's like, yeah, but it might be really helpful. So just share some of that, you know? Because it could really help out a friend or a colleague or somebody you know, somebody you've passed by, you know, that you've noticed that they've been struggling with like maybe a broad topic and you have a little bit of knowledge on that topic that you could give them to hopefully help them. And they might call you an idiot and be like, "Yeah, obviously knew that." It's like, "Okay, just making sure. I'm just trying to help," you know? I don't think that's a bad thing. But yeah, just food for thought. I got given a bunch of these, I drink a lot of energy drinks, and somebody gave me a bunch of these, like, sugar-free rock stars, like, they're not flavored, they're just sugar-free rock stars. I'm afraid to drink them because it sounds gross, right? Like, I like sugar-free Red Bull, that's good. I'm afraid because I don't like normal rock star, so I'm afraid to try sugar-free normal rock star, you know? Um, so, yeah. Sorry, somebody was coming in. But, yeah, I'm not sure if that'll be good or not. Another book that I was recommending was this one. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Really good for negotiating tactics. Um, he worked with like the FBI or one of those alphabet companies, or not alphabet companies, alphabet organizations. Um, and basically, he did a lot of like the negotiating for those, and it's a really good book. It's super helpful for me, at least, for if you're doing sales or you're doing a business transaction with somebody where you know how to negotiate and you know their tells, you know how to speak, what to say, what not to say, becoming mindful of your body motion and what you're doing. It makes a lot bigger impact than you think it would. So yeah, that's another book that was really helpful for me. Those are the only books that I recommended in that video. Um, I've read this twice. The only reason I don't recommend it is because that's one of those books where it's not technically like, I don't know, I don't wanna say it's not helpful, but it's definitely not like a starter book. That's something that, like, you find on a very long journey of getting into, like, human psychology and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it because a lot of popular people talk about this book, but I don't recommend just starting with that book because it's so, like, you find yourself getting a little disgusted reading through some portions of that book because it really just messes with your head. So, yeah, that's one of those books that the only reason I don't recommend it is because it's not the book that you're gonna start with human psychology, and it's something if you're going down that path of learning about psychology, learning how people work, you're gonna find that book further down that path. It's not a question of if or whatever, it's like you're gonna find that book and you're gonna read it. And in that instance, it's really good when you learn to decipher and not like, "Oh, I shouldn't actually apply all of these rules that he's giving me," because 'cause they're not all very morally sound, but they do work. Um, which is something I've always found interesting because people seem to think that, like, if it works, it must be morally sound, um, which has always struck me as odd because we don't live in a good world. If anything, we live in a pretty wicked world. So just because it works doesn't mean it's good or moral. Uh, I mean, you can lie and you can cheat and you can get to the top, and and stay there, right? I like, there was a movie, I can't remember the scene of the movie, but this guy was talking to his mother who had, like, dementia or something, and he was talking about, like, how evil and how wicked he is, and how he's at the top, and he's a multimillionaire, and he's super successful, and lives a great life, has a beautiful wife and stuff, but he lied and cheated his way the whole way there. He's just a bad person. And he's telling his mom, he's like, "And you're a wonderful person that's helped people your entire life, never did a thing wrong, and you're sitting in an old folks home with dementia." He's like, "How does that work with, like, God and everything?" And she responded, and it kinda took him aback that she, like, recognized him and responded to him, and basically said that the devil likes to trap people with all these great things because it doesn't seem like a prison when you're in this nice room with all these nice things, everything you could ever ask for in this room. And so it's like, this isn't a prison. This is all that I could ever ask for until you come to your dying days and the door slams shut behind you and you can't leave anymore. The choice is gone. Right. And so it's like all those things are great until you get to the end and realize, like, oh, none of that mattered. And now it's too late to take any of it back. So that was just something that I really liked that, I can't remember the name of the movie, but I really like that clip from that movie. And so, yeah, that made me think of that, of just, like, just because it works doesn't mean it's good, and doesn't mean that you should do it, right? You have to check, like, "Okay, I know this works, but does it stand up to my moral bars that I'm setting for myself?" You know? And some of those, it's not like a simple answer, right? It's not like, "Oh, absolutely not, never do this." Sometimes it's like, "Okay, I can do this, but only in these situations where it's not harming anyone and it's profitable to me, but in other situations, if I was to use this tool or this trick, it would hurt a lot of people and still profit me, but it would hurt everyone around me, right?" And so sometimes you have to gauge, like, okay, there's instances where this is okay or instances where this isn't. And just be be smart about what you're doing and be aware of your actions. Doesn't seem, I mean, it seems simple until you're actually in those positions, and most people don't think about their actions. They just do things out of impulse, which leads to a lot of chaos and harm and destruction. This is a book for anybody wanting to learn about, like, kind of the beginning of the United States. This is a really good book. Um, not in business sense in any way, but historically, it's very, very interesting. And the way that he wrote that book is, it's not like you're reading a history book. It's super interesting, very difficult to put down. And I started reading the book when I wasn't really big into reading. Um, that was one of the first books of a series that I picked up that my dad actually was like, because I was still in high school and I was being homeschooled at the time. And he was like, "No, you're gonna read this book. This is part of your school now." Because he read it and loved it. And it really kind of sparked me getting more and more into reading because it was so interesting, but also everything that was in that book was real. It wasn't like fantasy, and so it was just super interesting for me, and it was very difficult for me to put down, and I really enjoyed it. Let's see, what else do we got? Uh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, everyone's heard of that book. Great book, but if you say that, then everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, everybody says that." It's like, but it genuinely is a good book. I wouldn't say it changed my life like some of these people say, but it does have a lot of really good principles that you can apply to business and to your financial, um, endeavors. Just a good book. But yeah, that it does get annoying because you hear like every, like, millionaire that's like in their 30s or late 20s that's like, "Oh yeah, that book, it changed my life, man." It's like, yeah, everyone says that, so it doesn't mean anything. And I read it and it was good. Like, don't get me wrong, it was good. but not life-changing. This one I'm still working through. It's actually pretty good so far. One thing that I noted about it is it's more like you're reading um interviews, at least to me. Like it seems more like you're like reading like almost mini biographies of people's business lives. In the way that like he's basically explaining like this guy applied this principle of to whatever he was trying to do and succeeded in this way, and basically does that with like all these different people. Um, it's really good so far, but that's kind of how my brain interpreted it anyway. Um, but pretty good book. I'm only about maybe an eighth through it so far, but it's pretty good so far. Just realized I think I showed you guys the wrong book for the investing. This one's for the investing. This one's good too, but it, it's okay. But yeah, this one I have a bunch of my notes in there and stuff, but this one pretty obviously it's about investing. Um, something that I found really interesting about that book is the main principle of it could be broken down into like a few sentences. Basically, invest in what people need, not what people want. Now for like temporary results, you can invest in like what people want. And there's some long-term examples like Coca-Cola. Um, if you invest in that early, you'd be multimillionaire. And it's something people want, but not something people need. But things that you can always invest in and are always guaranteed to have a return is things that people need. So that's clothing, water, food, housing. Those things people will always need to have, right, to survive. And so he basically talks about like, okay, you're certain that those things work. And then I was watching a podcast of his actually, and he was talking about like what he invests in personally. And something I found interesting is his investing isn't really investing. It's now obviously for somebody with a lot less money, you'd have to invest, buy stocks and stuff. But his form of investing is he buys cattle ranches, right? Because people need food. So now he owns cattle ranches, or he'll buy a water purification plant, or he'll buy a clothing business, or he'll buy houses, right? Um, now the houses one is actually obtainable for somebody with a little less money, right? If you want to buy houses and turn them into rentals, that can work. But like the other stuff, like most people don't have the money to buy a cattle farm and run that while still doing everything else that they're doing. But that was just something I found interesting is he like buys them outright because and he made a good point where he was like people will always need those things even if like if the country, the world collapses, people will still need those things. But he was like, if I own stocks of those things and the country crashes, I don't own anything because it's all money based, it's all currency based, and the currency's gone. And so I don't own anything. Versus if I own a cattle ranch, I still own the cows and can sell that meat or trade that meat for whatever. and get something in return, right? So that was a pretty good point that he made. Which is why real estate is probably the best option, because you don't have to be uber wealthy to get into real estate. And it's something that you own, it's something tangible that's yours, that people are willing to trade to have if currency wasn't an option. People need somewhere to live, you know. All right, well, it's been about 25 minutes. I have to get those videos edited and ready for tomorrow, so I'll see you guys later. God bless.